Hey, Sam, thanks for joining us today. As way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Oh, hi, Brian. Yeah, great to be here. Massive long-term fan of the show and all of your content. Regularly have your podcast on while I'm preparing dinner in the evenings. And my wife actually jokes that there's three people in our marriage. There's me, her, and Brian Burns. She's so used to hearing you as I prepare my meals in the evening.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm Sam Parnell, based over in the UK. I'm a business development director working for eClinical Solutions at the moment, and we're a tech vendor working in the life sciences space. So we help pharmaceutical companies gain better control over their data, collecting loads of data, as everybody is in all industries at the moment. And often is the case, people don't have the infrastructure by which they can get their arms around the data and leverage it for what they need to. So yeah,
Sounds like a pretty easy sale.
I wish it was. Yeah, it's probably the toughest one I've done so far.
Is
And
it?
it really is. I think I've had the good fortune to have a pretty varied career across the board, actually.
Yeah.
And yeah, you've probably seen from LinkedIn and my the various companies I've worked at. I've kind of dotted between different industries. I've had a whole mix of everything from big blue chip corporates through to complete startups, and then everything in between. And I think the size of company I've landed at now is where I feel most happy, actually.
Yeah. Why is
Yeah.
that? What do you like about it?
It's not, I've done the startup thing, the complete startup, where you're scrabbling around trying to find product market fit. You're not entirely sure what that might be, and you're basically just leveraging Rolodex to
Yeah.
try and get into accounts. And it's fun, but I think it it's not necessarily sustainable. And I think for me, with my skill set, I prefer to work for organizations and have technology that at least has a little bit of kind of product market fit, and you've established some existing customers that you can build upon. I think that's what I do best.
Yeah. And you didn't like the bigger companies where there was too much infrastructure, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the polar opposite. So I've done some huge companies, the FTSE 100 sized organizations, and they're great for getting your foot in the door because everybody will see you because you've got
Right.
the
Get a
brand
meeting.
recognition. But actually getting anything done, both internally and being creative as a salesperson as well, is a lot more challenging in those bigger companies. So
Yeah. Because I did a big company through an acquisition, and it was probably more work trying to get something done internally than it was to sell something.
yeah, exactly. It's that's the biggest challenge.
Cool. And
Really is.
what do you like about sales?
I I love. I think if I like money, number one. Um,
Yeah.
uh, Sometimes you feel embarrassed to say that, but I think it's a good thing to be able to earn a lot of money. And I think the thing for me that I really like is that it's a real kind of leveler, because as an individual contributor, you can go and walk into some of these huge organizations and influence the direct, even it sounds a bit grandiose, but the direction that that company is going to move forward in strategically with the technology that you're selling, and it's all on you as the individual. Surely you've got a team around you that help you out with that, but I think there's an element of, wow, I could really influence something here as an individual who hasn't gone to uni and studied law or medicine or something like that, just all on the person. So
That
yeah, I
excites
find
you.
that I find it pretty motivating. It's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. And you came highly recommended for the show. What do you think motivated people to do that?
um I think it's a good question, actually. So I think the people that recommended me are people that I've worked with, and I think what they've probably seen in my approach is I'm quite meticulous around preparation.
Yeah.
I think I didn't used to be, but I think you get burnt a couple of times, particularly as you get into the more complex sale,
Yes.
actually, and the technical sale too. You go in unprepared or without the right team, you're soon found out. You're found wanting. And I don't know. I take thing. I'm the kind of guy that I don't want to feel like an idiot in the room. So yeah.
Right. And people tend to think that you're going to get a do-over, that, oh,
Hmm.
yeah, let's come back again. It's like,
Yeah.
no, that was your chance.
Well, yeah, it really is. So for me, I think the penny dropped for me about the whole kind of sales thing was when I realized that it is a performance, and to perform well, you got to practice, you got to analyze what you do well, and you got to perform on the day too, and that takes a lot of effort and a lot of thinking and preparation.
Yeah.
And for me, that is the fundamental thing that I think I try and take with me in everything. It's like, this is a performance, what we're doing today.
Yeah. And I think that too many people think, oh, it's just like, let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
Well, the default is it doesn't go well.
Yeah. I am not the guy that can think quick enough on his feet to just see how it goes and wing it.
Right. And
Yeah.
I always thought, like, how much time did it take you to get that opportunity to
Well,
perform?
yeah, that's it. Like the number, if you start thinking about the actual numbers of customer facing meetings versus the effort to get there, and then the actual effort into the preparation of the meeting sometimes is minuscule versus the amount of hours you put in to generate the meeting.
Yeah.
And
I mean, if it takes, 4 or 5 days to get a great opportunity to meet,
Mhm,
spend 2 or 3 hours maybe preparing,
absolutely.
uh,
It,
practice a couple times, maybe think through, what do you think they're going to push back on? How do we
yeah.
get the next meeting after this?
No, I'm with you. I think the more complex and technical sale that I've got into, the more I've actually had to do this, because it's one. I think there's a whole sort of various different reasons around that. I think when you're working in a technical and complex environment, the language and all of the subtleties of that industry, if you're not prepared, that can baffle you, and you get into the meeting environment and you're worrying about the wrong thing. Whereby, in my experience, particularly if you have a presentation or something like that, I will actually sometimes write out what I want to say in advance. I don't read it verbatim, but because I've written it out, I think about the words that I want to use.
Yep.
And I think the words that you use and the way that you use them are so important. Really are.
It is.
Mhm.
And, you know, I came to this conclusion, luckily early in my career, because if you blow that opportunity, there were only a few of them.
Yeah, they really are. And it takes, it's worth taking the time to invest the effort up front. And
Yeah.
I think it does a number of things as well, because if it is a presentation to an audience, if you've done that prep up front, you still have the adrenaline, but it's less it's less so, and it's less apparent. And I don't know, I kind of took quite a lot from there was an England rugby coach called Sir Clive Woodward, who took England through to the World Cup final, and we won in 2000 and 2003 it was. And he had this whole concept called teacup, thinking clearly under pressure. And I took a lot from that, because his whole kind of mantra was, if I can get the team so well practiced and rehearsed that when it comes to being in a pressured environment, they're in their flow state and it's just natural, then good things are going to happen. And I think you can translate that into the business context every day of the week.
Yeah, you can. And that's really how our brain works. And that's why, pretty much every athletic pursuit, it's just this constant repetition of
Mhm.
building up skills and practice so that when you are under pressure, your subconscious takes over. You don't have to consciously think.
That's it, Brian. And I think you feel that when you're in kind of these high, particularly I actually find on Zoom calls and team calls where you've got a big audience, you actually feel like you're in that flow state if you've done that preparation up
You
front,
do. Yeah.
delivering the presentation. Whereby if you don't do that, I do find with these types of calls, particularly with a big audience, you can very quickly, particularly because you can't read the room, start to go under, and it's quite hard to come back from it.
And I always had this saying, I go, I've never over prepared for a qualified meeting.
Yes, that is key. Yeah, the key is the qualified bit, because you can go.
If you're just meeting someone for coffee and you don't know where it is or what state they're in, they may be looking for a job, not looking for your product. Okay, that's kind of unqualified. But if you've had a couple of conversations with somebody and they have the problem you solve,
that's
and
key.
They're curious or interested in learning more, that's qualified.
And then the preparation comes in.
Yeah. And I've never left that going, I'm really way overqualified or over prepared.
I know it is funny that so many people leave these things to chance, and
And where do you get this competitiveness or this desire to win?
Yeah, so I'll give you a bit of my backstory, if you like, because that will help answer this question. So I drifted into sales. I went through school, wasn't particularly academic. In fact, I wasn't. You sometimes hear about the person being the first person in the family to go to university. I was actually the only person in my family not to go to university. So the real black sheep, if you like.
Yeah.
And it just didn't click for me at school. I couldn't join up the dots between, I don't know, lighting something in a Bunsen burner and how that would then translate into me doing something in the real world.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that didn't really click. And I ended up joining the army at 17.
Wow.
And so I was in military intelligence in the army, traveled a bit of the world, had some fun doing that. Didn't really like being told what to do
all the time.
All the time, which is kind of important if you want a long-term career in the forces. So after 5 years I got out of the army, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do going forward. So I actually don't know how I got into my first sales job, but it was a job selling gym memberships, basically, to the general public. And I loved it. I thought it was great because it was communication, and I did a lot of that in the army. It was meeting people. It was making them feel good about something because that's what they were joining a gym to do. And learned some pretty sort of raw, very transactional type of sale, but cut my teeth on it there. And then I got into medical device sales and kind of carried that forward and worked for a few different big companies on the medical device side of things, but always found that the kind of people approach resonated, and particularly in medical devices, actually, because I was selling to surgeons, and surgeons are, well, everybody has an ego, but surgeons are known to have a very big ego, and they are so interested in their craft of surgery, and all you have to do to get on with them is ask them about surgery, and
then look out. There goes an hour.
And I built on that approach, and I actually had surgeons come to my wedding because developed such great relationships over a period of time that it all evolved to that. So, but anyway, I'm not answering your question. I think competitiveness, I swam a lot at school, and through the age groups, and it was from a sort of a national championships perspective, we're there or thereabouts, and I played a lot of rugby too.
So we talked about the preparation, but how about the interpersonal skills?
Yeah, I think that clearly that's key, and what I've learned in over the years is that generally people care most about themselves. Yeah, they do.
It usually takes us a while to figure that out. Yeah.
It does. And I think when you first get into sales, you're taught to do the pitch and
Talk about
you
yourself.
about yourself and how great the product is and all of that good
Yeah.
stuff. And it just doesn't really wash because everybody cares about themselves the most. So I think the key for interpersonal skills for me in our context is to try and be interested in the person that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Because that's gonna that will help you no end, because that's about themselves. So, and if you can build upon that and be genuinely and legitimately interested, and I'm lucky because I've always worked in domains that I've actually had a legitimate interest in, and I think it sometimes helps not coming from that background, because there's so much to learn. Yeah, and that gives you an opportunity to be authentically interested in the industry and domain that you're working in, and you've always got great questions to ask. So,
and were you ever intimidated selling to like surgeons? Because I don't see any medical background.
yeah, totally. Yeah.
So going from no background to surgeons are kind of like on the top of the hierarchy, aren't they? In the medical world.
They are. I now sell to scientists and data scientists and other people working in life sciences. They're a more challenging audience than surgeons, actually.
Well, they're not known for their social skills, are they?
They're not, and they're normally very bright.
Right.
And they're working in organizations, big pharma, etc. So they're very commercially astute too. So you've got this mix of intelligence and commercial astuteness that makes them a kind of a formidable opponent if you're getting into a discussion with them. So you've got to be on your A game. And surgeons are the same, but surgeons are very tunnel visioned into helping the patient and what's right for the patient. So if you can get into that psyche, you can get them on board quite quickly. But yeah, I've always had slight imposter syndrome because I come from a background with limited, I didn't go to university or anything, don't have a degree, but I've never found it a limiter. Well, only personally, a personal limiter.
Yeah, the personal limiter, but there's so much on the internet now.
Yeah.
That all it really takes is work.
It does. Yeah, you can Google something, go onto YouTube. You can join industry forum groups. I do that now. I'm in a forum group for data managers in our industry, and it's a great network around. You learn. So
you learn. You write down the words, you Google them, find out what they mean, and then you have to Google every word in the definition to find out what they mean.
Yes, you do.
But because people always value the degree so highly, but the need to go to that magic building and listen to the magic people, you don't have to do that anymore. You just have to search for the magic people.
You do. You really do. I've often thought, should I go back and do a degree, and toyed with doing an MBA and all of that good stuff. And there's never been that kind of compelling thing about the course that I would be signing up for that makes me interested enough to want to do it, actually.
Right, because as a salesperson, you want to learn about a certain thread through that stack of knowledge.
Yeah.
You don't want to take 6 months of psychology to learn about one particular thing, or 6 months of data science.
Exactly.
And I always look at like formal education as kind of like your personal trainer. If you don't have the motivation to go run and lift weights and stretch on your own, you have to go to the gym.
Yeah.
You have to hire somebody to count to 12 while you lift those weights, because you don't have the structure, the discipline to do it on your own.
It's a really good way of looking at it. And I think I used to think it was a limiter because often you'd see on job adverts that must have a bachelor's degree. But once, even my little stint doing gym sales gave me the experience I then needed to have to jump into medical device sales. Even though they asked for a degree, it wasn't required because had sales experience, I had good track record, and I was able to come in and do a presentation, do a role play at an assessment center, and I'd at least sold something in the past versus nothing.
This is what reps always bring that up, because I always say, college degree for a rep, if you want to do it, you have time and you have money, go do it. But if you don't, and you don't want to, well, the company requires it. I go, if you can't get over that objection, sales is going to be very challenging for you, because the person hiring you is not HR, it's the sales manager. Mm-hmm. What do they want? People who can sell stuff.
Exactly. So, yeah, it amazes me that they're still on job descriptions.
Well, some of them have MBAs on there with 15 years of experience for entry level. It's just, it's boilerplate. It's cut and paste. No one's thinking.
I know. I know. It's crazy. But yeah.
How about as far as like keeping your focus? You clearly know what the flow state is, and with state management, how do you keep that on target?
Habit, basically. I think I perform best when I have good routines. Yeah. So doesn't happen every day, but alarm clock at 5 a.m., run and walk the dog, scheduled prospecting, and then the pipeline development and customer meetings in the afternoon. Don't drink too much at night and early night, and go and up again and do the same in the morning. I think if I've worked it out, if I stick to those types of routines, I'm in the right mental headspace to perform. Yeah. If I start to fluctuate out of that and have late nights or miss stuff or don't walk the dog in the morning or whatever, then the difficult stuff in the calendar starts to get pushed out or doesn't happen. And when you start to realize that, you understand how important routine and habit is.
Yeah, and I found that as well. Yeah, in that even though I get up early, I still set an alarm because it just gets me. And what I find is the faster I can get out of the house, the better. So I go for a run in the morning, and after that run, I feel like fantastic.
Yeah,
because endorphins are going, and it's still super early. Right? Yeah. So you got the whole day ahead. If you don't have that set time, you tend to like pick up the phone and goof off, and it feels kind of like work, but it's not real work.
No, it's not. It's really important. I get really great ideas when I'm out running as well. I find it stimulates the creative juices. You can play forward in your head what an important meeting might look like. I do that. I had an important meeting on Wednesday this week, and I went out and did hill sprints for about an hour and a half before. I went out and did some hill sprints, and it just put me in the zone for performing at the meeting. And people that listen to this probably think that's mad, but I personally think it has a big effect.
It does, because it gets the breathing going, which forces your brain to think differently.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it's like the shower. You get good ideas in the shower because you got a routine and you're not going anywhere. And all of a sudden, boom, some idea comes together.
It does.
And I don't know about, do you have your phone with you when you run or walk the dog?
Yes, I do. I'm normally listening to music or podcasts on the phone at the same.
I just found this app called otter.ai, and you can just hit them.
Yeah, it's good. It's
fantastic because it doesn't cut off your headphones, and you just hit the microphone and it turns voice into text, but it saves the voice as well. So boom, you got a note. Don't have to stop running, don't have to slow down. And all of a sudden you go home and you got 2 or 3 notes. So, just trying to remember an idea, an hour later when you.
Yeah. That's challenge. You're right. You do have these great ideas, or you listen to somebody on a podcast that comes up with a really good
Right.
idea, and then you're like, "What was that?" I'm going to have to go through that again and
That whole hour.
work out
Yeah.
a whole hour.
Well,
But
what do
no,
you think was the biggest epiphany or change that you made in your career that kind of took your selling to the next level?
yeah, the performance thing was key about that. I think approach to outreach my approach to outreach changed a lot over the last couple of years. And when I moved away from the direct messaging, the,
Commercial.
the
Yeah.
pitch, the commercial, because I always, I tell you what, actually, Brad, the real thing was when I took a step back and thought about if I was on the other end of that communication, what would I think? Would I click unsubscribe? Would it annoy me? Does it make any sense at all? No. And if the answer was no, I'd be like, why am I doing this? Why am I saying it? Why am I presenting it? I think it was that point of like self-reflection and trying to be the person on the other
Yes.
side of the table.
Yeah.
And it just amazes me that we still see so many of these messages. I get loads of them in my inbox still that are just
Oh,
written about me, basically.
right.
And why,
Yeah.
if you received that, would you ever answer? No. So why did you send it?
Well, they think because they're in market
Mhm.
and thinking about it all day that you're at least somewhat thinking about it all day. But
Yeah.
but when you're selling something like your stuff, they're not thinking about that all day. And if they have to really read it to try and map it to what they're doing.
Yeah.
And who does that?
Yeah, if I was to try and sell what I do via a commercial, it would take like an A4 sheet of paper, and you still would
Right.
then have to join up the dots.
Yeah.
Basically, it just would not work. So, I think, yeah, it's nice if you get lots of inbound, but we all know that that doesn't happen
Happen
all.
anymore. Yeah.
I, I think I find LinkedIn really effective these
Yeah.
days because people put themselves out there on LinkedIn. People who put themselves out there want to have their stuff liked and commented on, and then that naturally bridges the gap and breaks the ice.
Yeah. Oh, what do you tell other reps that you work with who either get stuck or they're not in the groove yet? Because I'm sure you hear about it from other colleagues.
Yeah, I do. I tell them to. It depends on the part that they're stuck on, but I think when it comes to outreach, I'm like, just reconsider the whole way that you are reaching out to prospects
Yeah.
and meet them where they are, basically at that point in time. Build the relationship and try and start a conversation that way. Yeah, I think the other tricky component, which I still have not cracked, is gain some curiosity or interest from a prospect, taking them through to the point where they're actually going to formalize an initiative for the type of technology that we sell, and all the way through to closure. That is a long. There's a lot there from
There's a
point of
lot
interest
there.
to closure, and I don't know. I talk about this a lot with people internally. Like, people think the sales process is linear or the buying process linear. Somebody reaches out, you make
Right. The
a
buyer's journey.
the buyer journey, that you subject them to a 1 hour discovery call where you ask them 50 questions and they respond to it. They then get a demo, they then get a proposal, and then it then closes. I've never had a situation where the sale is played out that way ever.
No.
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 It just doesn't, because
It
all of the
doesn't happen.
processes assume that somebody has an initiative or has a formalized process and want to buy something. But the majority of people don't.
I haven't never met any. Even when they do, it appears formalized. They have a
Yes.
little committee, they send out an RFI, an RFP, and then nothing happens.
Yeah.
Well, that's not a buying process. That's a busyness process. That's a
It is.
market study process. We're in
Yeah.
the selling process.
Yeah. I think that's another key point. I think early on in, I guess, flipping from medical devices to technology was a big leap actually in my career. So
Yeah.
med devices, you are actually the subject matter expert in medical devices. You're in theatre by the surgeon's side, and your expertise is on how that implant and instruments go together for the successful outcome of the operation. You're not the surgeon, but that's your domain. When you get it, I found when you go into technology, so complex, and there's a technical component there, the services component, there's the regulatory component often, that you as the salesperson, you're a bit more of a point man, and you have to bring the right people into the room. That took a long time for me to for it to click for me mentally actually. And I remember going to my first few meetings in technology sales alone. And like going into a room and people go, yeah, so we're here to hear about your solution, whole committee members of other people the other side of the room, because I was so used to doing that in med device sales.
Well, it's a medical device. It's pretty confined.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, known integrations, compares against something else.
Yep.
A set stack of vocabulary. You get into technology sales and it's like, you know, because everyone's got their own words for stuff and pre-built conceptions of what it is and how it works and what it does. And that committee meeting is the most dangerous meeting.
It is. Yeah.
Right? Because everyone's got different agenda.
They do. And they're so hard to read and very difficult to follow up on, I find, as well, because you're like, who do I go to?
Well, they scatter like cats after the meeting.
Yeah, they do.
And you're there going, do I have anything?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not as if it's almost awkward if you've got a committee meeting of 8 people there, particularly over Zoom, trying to force a next step with 8 people in the room. How are you going to do that? It's challenging.
Yeah, but a lot of reps want that meeting. I try and avoid that meeting. Is best at the very end of the sales process, where the customer and you are kind of presenting the solution.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, cool. Hey, I appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
LinkedIn's best. So Sam Parnell on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect and share ideas on this great topic of sales that we all love.